But were I to ask you about it, I imagine you're in a situation where you can't say much.
Yeah, I mean, what I can say without going too into it is that this year has been full of the highest highs and the lowest lows of my life. And I see so many women around afraid to speak, especially right now, afraid to share their experiences. And fear is by design. It's what keeps us silent. But I also acknowledge that many people don't have the opportunity to speak. So I do feel fortunate that I've been able to. And it's the women who have had the ability to use their voice that's kept me strong and you know, helped me in my belief and my fight for the world to be safer for women and girls. It's a pretty simple thing.
Blake Lively filed a sensational complaint. Very on brand, very social media savvy. When it didn't work as written, her team got extra creative. They tried to build the case around the complaint instead of inside it. Wayfairer's new 15-page response is a masterclass in one simple idea. That's not how this works. Back in December of 2024, Blake filed a lawsuit claiming sexual harassment, retaliation, and defamation by Justin Baldoni and Wayfairer Studios. The internet picked a side instantly. And to be fair, the story was built to make that easy. Powerful man, vulnerable actress, clear abuse of power dynamics. Her lawyer went straight to the press. Statements were made. Celebrities and fans weighed in. The narrative locked into place so fast that nobody stopped to ask the one boring question that actually matters in federal court. Does the story match the complaint? Spoiler alert, it doesn't. When Blake first filed the complaint, the narrative felt airtight. Hostile work environment, sexual harassment, a producer using language about birthing the film. An HR department allegedly kept skeletal to avoid accountability. Retaliation, after she complained. It sounded systemic, intentional, designed. The public absorbed that framing immediately because it arrived first and loudest. And once a story gets momentum, nobody wants to be the person reading footnotes. But if you strip away the interviews, the commentary, the outrage, and actually read what was pleaded, something uncomfortable shows up. The fully formed narrative people reacted to does not actually exist on the page the way everyone assumes it does. And Blake's legal team knew that. Because after the complaint was filed, they made a very specific shift. They stopped relying on what was actually pleaded and started building the case somewhere else entirely. When Wayfairer filed a motion for summary judgment, Blake's opposition suddenly exploded with material. New facts, new timelines, new supporting evidence, detailed narratives that had never appeared in the original complaint. She was reconstructing the case in real time. Interviews, expert reports, expanded framing, all introduced months after the lawsuit was already on file. That's not just strategy, that's a tell. Because if what you wrote at the beginning worked, you wouldn't need to keep adding chapters later. Her legal team knew something was fragile. They were shoring it up. But they were doing it outside the complaint. And that's where this goes sideways for Blake, because federal court does not let you crowdsource your pleading after the fact. On December 12th, Wayfairer filed their reply brief on their motion for judgment on the pleadings. 15 pages. No theatrics, no chest pounding, no PR flourishes. Just quiet, methodical demolition. They reminded the court what this motion actually asks. A motion for judgment on the pleadings is not about vibes. It's not about who sounds more credible on Twitter. It asks one narrow question. Do the words in the complaint, as written, state a legal claim? Not later. Not supplemented. Not implied. As written. And that's when the structural problems become impossible to ignore. Start with retaliation. Blake is suing under FEHA and Title VII. Both laws require one non-negotiable element before anything else matters. An adverse employment action. That means something concrete. Fired, demoted, paid less, denied a role, denied a promotion. Something real, something provable. Blake's complaint does not plead one. Wayfairer pointed this out directly in their motion. Blake's response was telling. One sentence. No analysis, no explanation, no attempt to point to the complaint and show where that element exists. Instead, she pointed the court to her summary judgment filings and moved on, like that would fix it. Federal courts have a rule for that. If you don't defend a claim when it's challenged at the pleading stage, you've abandoned it. Silence is treated as a concession. Blake didn't just weaken that claim. She effectively admitted it was never there. Then there's geography, which is where this case really starts sweating. Blake is suing under California law, FEHA, California Labor Code provisions. But Blake doesn't live in California. The alleged conduct didn't happen in California. The film was shot in New Jersey. The relevant interactions happened in New York. California law has a presumption against being applied outside the state. That's not controversial. That's settled law going back over a century. So Blake tried something clever. She pointed to a choice of law clause in an unexecuted loan-out agreement and argued it overrides California's territorial limits. Wayfairer's response is almost polite in how thoroughly it shuts that down. You cannot contract around a statute's reach. Private parties don't get to rewrite public law because it helps their case. Legislatures decide territorial scope. Courts enforce it. Contracts don't overrule it. Then Wayfairer went line by line through every supposed California connection Blake offered. A producer used the word birthing in pre-production. That's a metaphor for making a movie. Not harassment, not sexual, not actionable. Internal HR discussions. Deciding how much HR to have is not evidence of a conspiracy to enable misconduct. Blake complained to Sony. Sony wasn't her employer. Sony wasn't affiliated with Wayfairer. Sony told her that and sent her to Wayfairer contacts in New York. PR professionals in California, not Wayfairer employees, not involved in on-set conduct, not liable no matter where their desks were. Even if the court believed every new fact Blake introduced later, and none of it was in the complaint, it still wouldn't create the legal nexus required to apply California law. Vibes are not jurisdiction. Zip codes are not liability. Then there's joint employment. Blake spends pages arguing that Wayfairer was a joint employer with her actual employer. Wayfairer's response is almost darkly funny. We didn't even argue that. You made it up and fought it anyway. But fine, even if it were relevant, the complaint still doesn't allege what joint employment requires. No hiring authority, no firing authority, no control over pay, no day-to-day supervision. Shared services and overlapping relationships don't cut it. Courts have been saying that for decades. Then defamation. Blake claims defamation based on statements by Wayfairer's counsel to the press. Wayfairer's answer is short and fatal. Those statements are opinions about pending litigation, protected by litigation privilege, protected by fair report doctrine. Blake tried to compare it to a case involving extortion. That comparison collapses instantly. A lawyer expressing legal opinions is not extortion. It's not defamation. It's literally their job. Here's the part Wayfairer doesn't bury. Blake's entire opposition relies on evidence and arguments that do not appear in her original complaint. By doing that, she admits something in court she's been trying to avoid admitting in public. The complaint, as written, does not work. It needs supplementation, context, backfill, a second draft disguised as briefing. But that's not how federal pleading works. A Rule 12c motion is intentionally narrow. The court looks at the complaint, documents incorporated into it, matters of judicial notice, and nothing else. Blake had months to amend after Wayfairer filed their motion, to add allegations, to fix defects, to put evidence where it legally mattered. She didn't. Instead, she asked the court to let her incorporate her summary judgment filings wholesale, as if a complaint is a living document that updates itself by vibes and footnotes. Wayfairer's response to that idea is almost gentle. Courts don't do that. Ever. This case isn't about whether Blake has evidence, it's about whether she ever put that evidence where it legally mattered. She didn't. Because if she did, why else would they be rebuilding the case months later? Why else would they be trying to smuggle material in through the back door? Why else would they be hoping a judge would just make an exception? Because the complaint doesn't work on its own. And on a motion for judgment on the pleadings, that's the only thing that matters. This filing doesn't need fireworks. It doesn't perform outrage. It just lets the absence speak, and absence in federal court is fatal. Wayfairer asked for dismissal with prejudice. That means no rewrite. No second draft, no redemption arc. Not because Wayfairer out-argued Blake, but because Blake never actually pleaded the case she's been selling to the public for over a year. The complaint was always the problem. Everything else was just theater. If this helped you see the case clearly, hit like so it finds the people still stuck in the narrative. Subscribe if you want updates when the next filing drops. And comment below, was this ever about law, or was it always theater?
That's my opinion!